All right, in this video we're going to be looking at the warm-up for lesson 3.9 and 11.1. So you should have watched both videos. So 3.9 was all about finding a z-score. 11.1 is our introduction to normal distributions and how to set those up. So let's start with this first one. So again, if you haven't watched the videos for this, please don't waste your time right now watching this, because this is not going to be as useful as watching the complete lesson for both of these sections. They're not very long. So again, do that first, and then if you need to, come back and watch this warm-up video. All right, so let's look at how to do this first one. So for the first one here, we know that Joe scored a 72 on his test, where the mean score was 84 and the standard deviation was 6. And so we're trying to find out what the z-score would be. And so you want to make sure you know that formula. So the formula that you want to use here is this one. Where to find the z-score, we take the x value, whatever that is, minus the mean, and divided by the standard deviation. And so we take 72 minus 84. Now you got to be careful. It's not always the biggest number minus the smallest number. Sometimes your mean is bigger, sometimes it's smaller. In this case, the mean is bigger than the score that Joe got, and so we end up with a negative number. And that's all right. That's all right. That's the way it's supposed to be. And so we'd have negative 12 divided by 6, which gives us negative 2. So that means his score is 2 standard deviations below the mean. So that's how we would interpret that answer. Now for these other two, this is where we're going to be drawing a normal curve. And so let's look at what they tell us. They tell us that using the same FST test example where the mean is 84 and the standard deviation is 6, what percent of students scored better than a 72? What percent of students scored better than 90? And if a student can retake the test if they got less than a 78, what percent of students can retake the test? All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my normal curve. And so you just draw a curved line here. And in the middle, you're going to put the mean. And so the mean was 84. So we're going to start with this value being 84. And now the standard deviation is 6. So that means what we're going to do is we're going to count 6 units up and 6 units down. So this represents 84 plus 60 would be 90, and then 96. So we would add 6 going up, and on the way down, we would just subtract 6. And so that's how we get those numbers. And now to get the rest of these percentages, that's where we're going to want to use those values that we had in our notes, the 68, the 95, 99.7 rule. And then remember, we broke those down even further. So this, hold on a second, this section here. So between the 78 and the 90, that would represent 68% of our data. But remember, if we cut that in half, this would represent 34%. Between the 96 and the 72, that would represent the 95%. And if you broke it down, remember we did that in class in the video, so I'm not going to go through all that, but you want to watch the video for that. That means that this would be the 13.5%. That little section just in that area would be 13.5%. And then after after this section here, this would represent, or actually everything past 13.5 would represent 2.5% is how we refer to that. So you want to make sure you remember those little individual percentages for those different sections. So now when I'm trying to find out, well, for part A, we want to find out what percent of students scored less than a 72%. Well, that's below that second standard deviation. That's what I have below there in red. The negative 1, negative 2, negative 3 represents how many standard deviations above or below the mean those values would be. And so that 2.5% would represent 2 standard deviations below the mean. They didn't ask that, but that's how you'd use it. All right, looking at part B. Part B says, this is over here. Part B, we want to find out what percent of students got more than a 90%. And so that's where we would take and add the 13.5 and the 2.5%. And together that makes a total of 16%. So 16% of students, if this was a normal distribution, would have gotten more than a 90%. And if a retake was anything less than a 78%, well, then to figure out what percent of students could retake the test, well, again, we would have the other end being the 13.5 and the 2.5. So when we add those together, we get 16%. So hopefully you were able to make those connections with what we learned about in the notes. And hopefully this warm-up will help you refresh your memory and allow you to do better on your assignment. So with that, good luck now as you begin to work on your 11.1 and 3.9 assignment.